All right. Um, can everyone hear me? Hello, hello. Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for joining, and I apologize. Took a while for me to set everything up, so um, hopefully it wasn't too long of a wait. Um, what happened was I had to get OBS working, and I'm honestly not a hardware person at all. It just took me so long to get everything working. Um, so yeah, that was that. Um, all right, so today we're reviewing some games from today's tournament. I'm sure we've all had a exciting tournament so far. And so when the organizer asked me to review some games, they said, "Oh, I could pick my own games." So I think maybe it's better if the viewers who's actually here listening, um, you can suggest the games, right? If you found a game that's interesting, just let me know. And I've got the link here, so I've got all the games ready to go. So just let me know which game you like to review. So there's a little bit of a delay, so hopefully I still get to see the chat comments. I think there were quite a few upsets today, wasn't there? Well, it looks like I haven't gotten any suggestions just yet. Um, okay, but I do see a question. Okay, um, can I be AlphaGo? Wow, it's a it's a question that asks directly to my soul. No, I can't be AlphaGo. I mean, AlphaGo, I think won against Kojie without any doubt whatsoever. Just a clean sweeps against Kojie. So um, no, I can't beat AlphaGo. It's tough. So okay. I mean, it's okay if you guys don't want to suggest. I found this game to be quite interesting. So why don't we start off with this game right here? This game between Guan Yu and Alex Chi. Um, yeah, so right, so James mentions that looks like Guan Yu had a tough day. So I actually scrambled right to start the screen right after I finished my round, so I wasn't able to catch a lot of the games at the end of uh, round two. So all right. So I guess yeah, this is a pretty popular opening nowadays. The approach and 3-3 invasion. Um, I guess the extension move is a little bit rare. Maybe it's a good time for us to take a little bit to discuss the differences between the push and the knight's move. So what's the difference between what's the difference between those moves in response to the 3-3 invasion? Oh, okay. Right. So, I mean, 3-3 invasion is a Joseki you would expect to see no matter what level you are. So I think it's probably like if you were to learn one Joseki, this would be it. Just know every single variation with the 3-3 invasion, and you'll be set for a while in terms of Joseki. Um, Probably the next one to know is the one in the upper left, which we may spend a little bit to discuss here. Yeah, so 3-3 invasion. Um, there are a lot of variations that actually branch back to the same thing. So one example is, so black pushes and white blocks here, and black Hane's back. Okay, and a very popular sequence back then was white could Hane, cut, and then Atari downwards. So this was probably the most popular sequence nowadays. Um, and I can tell you that a lot of sequences actually go back to this. So one of them is when black captures the stone on this side, and then white Atari's here and captures the stone, and then cuts here. So in this variation, a very important premise is that white can't just ladder the stone. If white can just ladder the stone instead of move 13 here, then this result would be better for white. Because because white can't ladder the stone, then the black would be okay. So this is an even result. So why is it bad if white can ladder? The answer to this question is also pretty complicated. And the reason is because so black's ladder breaker is not very severe, which means white can actually tenuki or find a more efficient move to protect against the ladder breaker. For example, maybe white will attach and try to do some forcing moves here before having to spend another move to finish capturing. And you can also see that if black escapes, it's not all that severe either, because, well, if anything, white could just attach, and the group on the bottom isn't really going to get attacked either. So that's why the variation with white laddering is just so good for white. But for those of you who've been paying attention to recent pro games, you realize that recently this game hasn't really been that popular. So for this variation, black's left side is really not that efficient. So there's this cross shape. It just doesn't feel very good. So I guess it's sort of lost its trend. And you don't really see many pros play it recently. And I think it also caught on. I don't see this as much nowadays. So it seems like most people would just Atari. Right, so I think I got a little bit of a delay seeing a question. Yes, so if in the ladder sequence that I showed, if black were able to escape, then if black extends, that's right, white would still jump out. But of course, in this case, white wouldn't Atari because this move is too close. It's forcing black on the right side. You wouldn't really make the Atari at 13 unless you could capture it. And generally, yeah, this move is big because black can play this in Sente. White would have to spend an extra move to capture. So in Go, if you get surrounded in Sente, you're generally not very efficient because the moves you spend to make eyes are not making much territory. So if you don't have to get surrounded and make eyes, then usually you would prefer that instead. Yeah, so in this case, you would see this Joseki quite a lot. And there are multiple branches of this. Black could capture and just Tanuki. Black could just play away directly. Black can also Atari right away and start a running fight in the center. So these are all possible moves. And yeah, so these are all relatively popular sequences after white Hane and cuts. So in this fight, white would usually just jump out, and then we have a lot of stuff going on. So I'm not going to go into the details of the later fight. That will probably take a lot of reading, and it's also very complicated. Yeah, so feel free to interrupt. Feel free to type any questions in the chat or suggest a game that you thought was very interesting. Doesn't have to be necessarily the Open Division games. So yeah, just let me know if there's a game that you like to review or if there's a sequence that you like me to look at. So there is an important difference here when black makes the second line Hane rather than when black plays the knight's move. And I think that not a lot of people fully understand why or what the difference is between these two variations. So I think if you do understand this, you're going to be a very strong player because I think so the differences are very subtle. But the differences are important enough for any, I think, 5-dan player or above to know it will make a difference. So so I guess you could think a little bit. So the question is, if black plays the knight's move versus this sequence, what are the main differences between these sequences and why? Yeah, I will definitely talk about f3 as well. F3 is an interesting move also. Yeah. So any takers on this question? It doesn't look too different, and many sequences actually return to the same branch. For example, the variation that we just talked about was a very common variation that occurs in both of these sequences, right? You could imagine if black plays the knight's move, white could Hane and attach, right? And if black pushes, then we would have exactly the same sequence. So yeah, I see a lot of honest answers here, and to be honest, it is a hard question, and the main difference here, um, is that white white wants to continue locally if black extends and Hanes. So in this case, if white ignores, black has two follow-up moves, right? Black could Atari and descend. This eliminates any weaknesses with the cuts at e2 and g2. And also the descend here at b3 makes it very difficult for white to build any influence on the left because black can always jump in at b5. So this move sort of devalues the left side for white. The other follow-up sequence is for black to cut and then extend under it and extend out. This is a fighting sequence, and this fight definitely favors black because white played away one move. So the first aspect of this particular sequence is that black's follow-up move is more severe in this situation. So if we go back to the knight's move and white plays away, black doesn't really have any direct follow-ups here. You could diagonal, that's probably the most common follow-up move, but that's it, right? You can see it doesn't really affect white nearly as much. So that's one of the main differences. So, okay, since we said that the first variation here, black is forcing white to respond, then isn't this just better for black then if the follow-up is more severe? And that's not true, because even though the follow-up move is more severe, white also has a lot more options. And the first is the Hani and cut sequence that we looked at earlier. White could also just extend and extend. That's a perfectly fine variation. White just takes the influence, and that's a very normal result. So the difference here is that if black just plays the knight's move, when white Hani and attaches, black doesn't actually have to push, and that's one of the key differences. Black can actually just Atari and extend out, and then just perform a trade. And in this case, white gets gote and black gets sente. Also, the left side, no one really wants to develop there anymore. So black actually has a choice whether or not to play the push. Okay, so let's just summarize a little bit. Okay, so if you have this variation, white can Hani and cut, and black doesn't really have any alternatives. This variation also forces white more, because if white doesn't respond, black's cut and Atari moves are more severe compared to if white just extends. So if you're black and you want white to continue playing, then you would want to keep pushing. And that's actually the main idea for playing the push as well. If you just want a knight's move, it makes it so that white's follow-up move is worse. But also, it makes it that your local next move is less severe. Yeah. So when you learn a sequence in Go, there should always be a pro and con. If you play a move that's always just better, then there's no reason for your other move. So that would be just forcing, right? And so if you're comparing two variations and your conclusion is that both variations are okay, then there has to be a drawback. And you can't have a variation where one side is just clearly better or this one's always better. Then the other variation should not be an option at all. Yeah. So I see few comments. Could you explain what the benefit of white playing the Kosumi at e16 instead of f15? If f16. Okay. I see. So this is a question about the upper left Joseki. Yeah, sure. I might as well, right? Because I said that these two are the most common Josekis you should know nowadays. So yeah, I'd be happy to. But I think we should finish our discussion about the Houthi invasion, and then maybe I'll save that question for a later discussion. Yeah, so earlier there was a question about the jump. And again, the differences are quite subtle. So when you jump, obviously it gives white the possibility of just pushing and cutting. And this is a very common Joseki as well. It just goes back to the Hani and double Hani Joseki. So in this case, black takes the stone, white takes the corner. Black gains more influence though, because when black extends up, there are a lot of forcing moves in the corner that white has to respond to, which will give black a lot of influence here in the middle and facing towards the right side. So this is an even trade. If white doesn't want to do that and white plays away, then black has to make sure that white cannot push and cut on the inside. This is a variation that prefers white. When white ladders the stone, black's very cramped in the corner, so locally it's a little bit better for white. Even if black can get a ladder breaker, say white just responds by capturing or playing some weird large knights move. I'm sure this is something a lot of people like to do nowadays. And then black responds. So locally, because white is very efficient, this slightly prefers white. So if you're black and you play the jump, you have to make sure that white can't push and cut on the inside and just ladder your outside stone. So the local variation here is that there are two main variations. There's one with white pushing and, sorry, not that one. When white pushing and just knights move, this is a very common follow-up for white. And this is also an even result. So black could Tanuki now and just continue in the upper left, for example. So this is one possibility, and the other one is black extending. So if black extends, then white can push and cut. This makes it so that black can't capture and black has to connect. And there's a very common Tsuji here that we should all know about, which is what we call the nose Tsuji, right? This is a very common Tsuji for white. This attachment at h3. So this sacrifices the stone on the left. And in this case, black can't extend out because black needs to spend an additional move here in the corner. So this middle fight would not be very good for black because black has to spend an extra move here and white will get the first move in the center. So this is definitely not possible for black. Which means in response to this Tsuji, black has to go under. And usually black plays another turn. This move is actually extremely big. It's much bigger than it looks because after white gets the Atari, white can start developing on the bottom. And white doesn't necessarily have to respond to the cutting point anymore. So this move is a move that looks small, but it's actually very big because it changes the control of the lower side. So this is a variation that you should know about if you want to play the jump. There is a slight benefit for the jump. So if white ignores the jump and black gets another diagonal, then the local shape is slightly, very, very slightly more efficient than black just playing the lower knight's move. So it's slightly more efficient than a shape like this. But then again, the difference is very, very subtle, and I think it's almost can be ignored in many cases. It's more of like a mood thing. Like if this makes you if the other diagonal makes you happier, then you should play the jump, I guess. Can white stretch at J3 next? If not, should black Atari? Okay, so I guess this question is about the follow-up here. Yeah, so in this case, white usually doesn't want to extend directly. It is quite a big move, but it's usually not urgent. So usually white would want to spend a move here because this move, yeah, okay. Yeah, so in the opening, so let's say you just built a wall like this as white. You have to use that, right? You have to use that for something. If you extend, then you'll end up in gote. And you never want to end up in gote if you have a huge wall like this because your opponent's just going to play the first move here and just limit the wall. And that's a very bad way to use influence. So if you build influence, you want to start using it immediately. And the earlier you use it, the better. You can still use it now, but it's going to be less efficient because black got the first move. White playing the extension later is also worth quite a bit. It's also a big move. This is generally a big move for both players. If you're wondering about the value, I would say it's definitely worth less than like a corner approach. But it might be worth a little bit more than like a two-space extension, for example. I probably can't really give you a more accurate conclusion for that because it really depends on the situation afterwards. So both players can play at J3. There's actually I guess, less common variation where white just pushes in hanes. Sometimes white would just hane directly. And black pushes and white just pushes and extends, and black jumps. This is also quite a popular result as well. Can you see the different black d11 versus c11 or c12? Oh, okay. I see. So I'm seeing a lot of questions about this upper left Joseki. Okay. Yeah, we can definitely move on to the upper left if. But I want to give a chance for any more questions about this 3-3 invasion stuff. So I guess just one more comment while we wait. Usually white plays the knight's move, and I feel like this is more popular because in this case white actually gets 4 spaces, and that's a little bit stronger. And if black ignores, white can spend another move to protect the tiger's mouth, which would make black's corner a lot smaller. So this is a very popular option for white. And if black extends like this, then white can Tanuki for now and then come back to J3 later. Again, a lot of these variations are similar, so it's really up to you which one you want to pick. I think in most cases, the difference might be like, I don't know, 1 point maximum. So really it doesn't matter too much. As long as you play one of the main correct variations, you're usually okay. Even with the hane, it's okay for white. I see a lot of people not play this nowadays. I also see a lot of mistakes here when white descends. You got to make sure that you push once more before you block. This is probably the most common mistake that I see. You got to make sure you push first. Otherwise, if black doesn't make the G2 exchange, white could turn in Sente. This is a very famous life and death situation in the corner. So yeah, this is called a large pig's mouth, and I talk about this a lot with my students. So everyone should know about this. It's such a common life and death corner that you expect to see like pretty much in every, well, not every game, but you'll definitely see it if you're a regular player. And this is locally a dead shape. Yep, so black has to respond now, so that means black should push first before blocking. So just make sure you remember to do that. If you're a regular player of the 3-3 invasion, I see so many people forget about that. So as much as like knowing Joseki and generally where to play is important, if you're focusing time on figuring out very subtle strategies about the opening, I would say it's going to be it's not going to be very efficient, like in terms of time spent. If you want to improve, I definitely wouldn't worry about like stuff like, okay, if you want to block here, or do you want to block on the other side? Literally, it's the same. Like me personally, I don't find any differences between these. Yeah, don't really. I wouldn't worry about anything like this. Yeah, so if there aren't any more questions, we can continue to look at this upper left shape. Yeah, the low approach is pretty much the most common Joseki nowadays. Um, and yeah, for the 3-4 point, oh, Yu Yang's doing a stream. For the 3-4 point, it's pretty much everyone plays the low approach nowadays. Okay, so let me get back to a very good question from before. So what's the difference between the diagonal and knight's move here? There's actually a very clear difference, which doesn't take a long time to remember. So the main difference here is that the knight's move is more efficient, but it controls the corner less. And that's really the only difference you have to remember. So if you're wondering whether or not to play the diagonal, so if you're wondering whether to play the diagonal or the knight's move, if you like the corner, you should play the diagonal. If you like the side or you want to be slightly more efficient, then you want to play the knight's move. It's really up to your preference. The diagonal is definitely okay. And actually, I prefer the diagonal a bit more usually compared to the knight's move. The difference is really related to black's attachment. And I think usually if white plays the knight's move, it's pretty popular for black to not respond. Of course, black can also just play some extension moves. But black can also tenuki. And I think black tends to tenuki more if white plays the knight's move, because if white comes back to pincer, black has attached in double hane. Yeah. And this is a quick way for black to settle the group. And so that's why you see black tenuking a lot. So that's the only difference you have to remember. If you play the diagonal, and if white plays the diagonal and white pincers, then black can't really play the attached and double hane sequence. And no, I'm not Korean. You can tell by my last name. Yeah, so the knight's move does have that weakness. If you play the knight's move, it can get cut, especially later on. Let's say black protects and black plays the pincer. The pincer is also more severe when you play the knight's move. And that actually applies to every single situation in Go. If you want to be a little more efficient, you have to protect it later. So you want to make sure that you are aware of that situation. So if you want to be more efficient, you have to protect the later weakness. So usually when black pincers, white would kick in to play one more move to protect the corner. Yeah, and actually that's the same with so the other question was about, okay, what's the differences between this one or that one or that one or that one? And yeah, so it's the same thing. If you play the slower, if you play the 2-space extension, that's obviously slower than the 3-space, right? And in that case, it's more solid, meaning your opponent can invade. but it's also slower because it takes less. And I think that's all you have to remember between these. I don't think it's really that meaningful if you okay, you can go into okay, if you play the time move, okay, what happens if black approaches and attach? In reality, there are a lot more. There's a lot more to it, but I don't think it's really that meaningful for us to really go into that unless you're really familiar with this already. So if you're just getting into this and learning about it, then I really don't think you should worry too much. Just know that okay, if you want to be more efficient, let's say black has a very strong shape here, then you want to play closer to your own stone because if you are really strong in the lower left, then you would want to play closer to your own stone, right? So stuff like that you can decide. But if the question is what's the difference between the two space and the three space, then really I can only answer it by talking about okay, the two space is less efficient, but it's more solid, right? And the three space is more efficient, but they're invasion moves. And in the same sense, the knight's move is more efficient, right? It's obviously more efficient than a diagonal because it takes more. And the drawback with the knight's move is that it has a weaker connection, which allows black to take advantage of the 3-3 attachment at c17. So that's the drawback for the efficiency for the knight's move. I think it's important to understand these differences because they actually apply to a lot of other fundamental ideas in Go. And if you don't really understand these ideas, it's actually a lot harder for you to learn and study. Even like opening variations or mid-game results, because really the difference here is like it feels very subtle, and it is. But if you understand the difference in terms of the efficiency, then it helps you a lot when you're dissecting like more complicated fighting situations, which we will get to very soon. So let's move forward with the game now. Okay. So white's making a double Hane sequence, and black pushes on top. So this push is actually the only correct move here. Because if black descends now, you can see that when white pushes up, white already has a very solid upper left, and black also has some potential here. And after white takes move 2, it's a move that diminishes black but also expands white. So black needs to push on top. So this is all pretty straightforward stuff. And this is a move that I don't really like. Yeah, so Alex is one of my students, and so yeah, I'm gonna say I don't really like this move. So the start point feels kind of so. First of all, it's a splitting move that obviously favors the upper right, but it doesn't really make sense because the upper right is already very strong. So I think I would definitely at least play one move lower, like something like this. Yeah. So in this case, it feels like a more even split. And actually, I don't think you're really worried about black taking the upper side because the upper right side is already very solid. So it's not really that efficient for black to continue developing a very narrow space when it's already very strong. But if white plays here, then I think it's obvious that black will pincer from the bottom, right? So that there's no doubt about this. So it actually makes the choice for black really obvious. Yeah, so, okay. So black attacks and pressures this group, and white settles it. It looks like a pretty even exchange. So I wouldn't say the right side is the most urgent area. there are a lot of other places you can play, I think. Um, I think extending is a pretty big move because black is high here, and maybe white is afraid that black will connect. It is slightly tricky to invade or reduce something like this because it is a very big framework that black is developing. I think it's really up to your preference. Like personally, I would be pretty fine with this, and then just capturing the upper left. White also has a very big framework, so it's not like black is the only one. It really depends on what kind of game you like. Was the S17 exchange worthwhile? Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah. So when white played this move, was this move worth it? And probably no. At least I wouldn't play here right now. It's a pretty strong group in the upper right, and you're just making it stronger. I mean, territory wise, it's typically worth more than the side extension. But we have to remember that white already has this upper left. It's just helping white build this even further. Um, so I think the answer is no. I wouldn't. I definitely wouldn't have descended here. Yeah, yeah. Yeah. It is tricky though, the timing of these things. Yeah, but I probably wouldn't play here. So this game was played this morning, um, or I guess at noon. It was morning for a lot of people on West Coast at least. So this seems like a pretty even exchange, and then we had this sequence. So what I was a little bit confused about was the fact that no one actually played on the left. So I was wondering about whether it was worthwhile for black to make the Hane exchange. Um, hmm, maybe not. So I was looking at like an invasion like this, but I guess white could Hane first. So that wouldn't really work. It is tricky when you're thinking about what to do in these situations. Because black is starting a fight here, but white is spending a move here. So black really needs to invade on the left and get something out of it. So in the game, black attached and invaded. So this seems like a pretty good strategy. Black is escaping this first and then invading on the left. Oh, okay, yeah. Black could maybe black, but no. So I was looking at that too, and I think it's probably not working because after white captures, the descend isn't really worthwhile. Even if it works, I don't think it's working. But if you just have to end up doing this, um, it wouldn't be worthwhile because you're gonna have to Hane anyway, and white can just connect back. So this wouldn't be a good result for black. Yeah, so I was just reading out this variation, but then I realized that it's probably not really worth it for black. Even if you can get the descend, it's probably not worth it either. Um, but first of all, it might not work because um, it's hard to say whether or not you can kill it because black is also very short on liberties. But even if you can do something like this, um, maybe it's not worth it either. But also, white can Atari in the middle and connect because the extend. Oh, actually, white can Hane here, um, maybe, or white can just descend and clamp. It seems like the Hane is pretty difficult to deal with as well. There's a lot of stuff that's going on here. I think even if we just go with this variation, um, it's still arguable whether or not this is worthwhile for black, right? Black gets Gote, and it's only a marginal gain. Yeah. Yeah, so I think I like this strategy. Black attaches out. But what I take from this move is that black's probably not very happy about the game, because the normal move would be the diagonal here, but maybe black is afraid that white would just make a solid move here and then just take both of the territories. So probably black is worried about the territory. Black doesn't really have that much territory. And of course, white could fix the sequence we just talked about with the Hane exchange. So yeah, I take this as black not feeling very good about the game, and black is trying to make the game more complicated here by Haning and invading. And I think this seems like a pretty smart sequence. But so here, white's cross-cutting. And even though normally a crosscut is not necessarily a good sequence, but this particular shape is one of the cases where crosscut's actually very effective. So the shape I'm talking about is this one. So when you have an invasion here and you crosscut, this is actually a very efficient shape for white. It's very hard for black to break through. So the only way for black to continue is the Atari and extend in the middle. But then I think I don't really like this variation for black. And the main reason is because in the sequence here, black has already lost some stuff. Like so, black attached, which gave white the Hane. Now the upper side is relatively solid, but also white got the corner. And now so the gain here is not that much, because if you think about the original Atari here at f4, if we think all the way back to the Atari, black cut white, and black pretty much gave white the settlement on the bottom. It's not completely settled, but the move at L4 definitely has a set value attached to it, right? At least it prevented black from playing here to make territory. And also, after the attachment, white got the corner for free, and so I don't really think that this series of exchanges was all that beneficial for black. So I'm actually doubting the maybe the Hane a little bit here. I'm thinking maybe black has a better move. And yeah, this is very complicated. But there isn't really anything black can do from the lower side standpoint, because here the Atari at C11 never works. So there isn't really much black can do here. And if black gets surrounded, black won't be able to live. Yeah, so this is I think this is definitely, so if you're in an actual game, this is definitely a point where you should spend a long time. The decision for black here really affects the rest of the game. Maybe someone in the audience has a suggestion here? Let's see if I can hide this. It's not really that meaningful, I guess, to see the percentages or the points. Oh, there we go. Yeah, we don't need the win rates or points. All right, so let's think about this move. Um, oh, maybe a3 at e9. Okay, that's definitely a possibility. No, e9 the jump. I see. Okay. I actually like that a lot. Yeah, because so why is this move sente for white? That's actually a really great point by James. Yeah, this is actually there's no reason why this is sente because if black jumps out and black can just push first, and white's not really going to capture the one stone in the corner and let black hane. So white really needs to respond here, and then black can descend. Yeah, I think we have a solution. I actually like this solution. First of all, white's very small here if white doesn't respond, and likely white would have to either jump out. Well, actually, maybe not. Maybe not. So whether or not the game is better for black is a different story, but I think this move is definitely better than the one in the game. White can still make these exchanges. So it is very hard to say which side this prefers. I might still like white a little bit. Yeah, but I think given what happened in the game, I would say this. I would prefer the jump compared to this Atari right here. Yeah, so after the attachment, it's a little bit hard to answer. Maybe black can pull back, but that's a really, really complicated variation as well. And I don't think that's a variation I want to go into um, right now. So no. C13. I was thinking maybe C11. But then it also doesn't feel very good for black. I think white might just Hane and Atari. This also doesn't feel too good. And then just connect here. And there, I was looking at a sequence where black captures the left, something like this. But that ends up in Gote, and white will capture this upper left, so that's probably not worth it for black. But this is indeed very complicated because okay, maybe black can cut here and fight the capturing race. Um, but I guess my intuition tells me that it won't work for black. So yeah, it is a difficult situation for black to deal with right now. And the wedge doesn't work because white can just Atari and Atari, and it's pretty much the same thing as the game, but only worse. So I think at this point I'm liking white a lot. And yeah, so this is actually something that I want to talk about. So right here we know that white is ahead. Because we talked about how black didn't really gain too much from this whole fight, starting from the cut at f4. So all white needs to do is just diagonal and then just play very solid. So I don't think there is a um, I don't think it's really worth it for white to take this risk here. But really, the main move that was a little bit wrong here is white definitely should have blocked here. This move is extremely important. This is a move that looks like it's looks like it's very slow, and it looks like it doesn't really matter that much, but this move locally allows white to live. And if you think about the move differences, it's really the same. It's really the same, right? Except in the game, black got the push, and then black had to block. So I think in a game, I would definitely play N18 instead of the bamboo here. Notice how white only has one eye now, and black was able to make white run. So that's something that I wouldn't really prefer here for white. If white blocks, black still needs to protect the group. And I would actually be pretty happy just going with this variation because white doesn't have anything to worry about, which will allow white to play the first move on the lower side. And this is a very urgent place. I feel like this is the last big point on the board. And I think white would take a relatively comfortable lead going into the endgame here. Yeah. So the later fight here, not really much, nothing too special. So black did, and I think black intentionally didn't respond on the upper left because it's a little bit annoying for white to capture it. So probably black thought it was more important to get the center first rather than escape the few stones, which I think makes sense. Right, so then white protected the bottom. And yeah, so at this point, we're going into endgame, and all groups are being settled. But white has a relatively clear lead, so I think it's pretty hard for black to come back now. So let's see if black had any chances here. Okay, so this looks like a kind of an interesting sequence. What? So black made the turn here. So I guess black is trying to threaten white. Okay, but black really needs to continue here. I think this is a chance for black. So what's happening right now is even though white is threatening black's connection, but black can live in one move by the Hane and K19, which means that white can't really do anything yet. There's also a weakness at with the wedge at H11, but actually I think an attack move here on the bottom can be very severe. I mean, that's the whole point of black playing N3 in the game. So I think this would go into a very complicated game. So I guess, yeah, white was a little bit greedy here, and white should have just played this move directly. It's not like black will diagonal or something, right? This is not really that big. It's only capturing 4 points maximum. And there's a lot bigger moves than that. Like this connection is huge, I think. Does that make sense? I feel like both of these moves are not very necessary. So white's diagonal here and also black's response, I don't think any of these moves were really necessary. Black can't really be defensive now when black is clearly behind in territory. I'm not liking this at all. Yeah, so I think if white is able to just spend a move here and just protect the group, I think that's game over. And not only that, but in the game, white got Sente. White was able to force black to live and take Sente. And I bet Alex was scratching his head when black got the Hanaya. So this is something that we should definitely pay very close attention to. And it's that you always want to exchange those double Sente moves. Yeah, so this was like a free, it was a free 4 points for black. In the end, it didn't matter because White's lead was quite substantial, but 4 points from nothing, that is a huge difference. Yeah, so but at this point, black just did so poorly in the middle fight that it didn't really matter the little bit. So really, I think black's big chance here was black needed to attack the middle right here. Just thinking about the proper move here. I think maybe even just this knight's move and extend, this would make the later game much more comfortable. Because first of all, white's not completely alive. And this is the same as protecting the middle. So black really spent too many moves here and not accomplishing very much. Black is clearly the side that's stronger. So that makes it even worse for black in terms of the overall result. Yeah, when you're in a mid-game fighting situation, that one move matters like 10 times more than in the opening if you're just thinking about the move to play. So definitely focus on opening moves, I would say. Don't like this is when the game really matters. Yeah, so I think this is probably black's major chance, and white should definitely have just played here. I don't think it's necessary at all to go in the middle. I mean, if black goes in the middle, white just continue endgame. I think there's no doubt that white's ahead. Absolutely no doubt about that. So actually, notice here that on the right side, nobody played any moves. There's actually another big problem with that, and I wonder if the if the Dan players in the audience can tell me what's wrong with that. Oh, Dan Slayer, you can. That means you are even better than the Dan players in the crowd, right? So you can tell us what's the problem with neither player playing in the upper right corner? Any takers? Wow, I just counted and White's definitely winning. I think White's winning by at least half of the Comey, so at least like 3 or 4 points, which is quite a substantial lead. Yeah, so maybe I misled everyone a little bit here. So it's not that um, it's not that Black is not alive, but actually, so the reason why I yeah, everyone's confused mostly. The reason why I pointed this out is White can attach and then Atari, and Black has to connect. All right. You're only down on Fridays. Oh, okay. So I'll have to wait 6 more days. Um, yeah, so there's a huge problem with this because after white gets this in Sente, later on, if black captures the stone, this is a free exchange. I think this is the thing that I pay attention to most because this is the stuff that really matters in the end because when you get free exchanges in, that's like free points, right? If you're reading so hard just to get like a few points in a trade, then that's just a trade, right? But now white is gaining probably at least 2 points in Sente. So if you think about what happens if black captures, um, so in the game white responded, and responding is a big move because if black gets the push in Sente, black can diagonal, and locally this whole white group isn't alive, right? So if we view this as an exchange, white can never get the attach and an inner push move, and that's actually very very important. It's actually more than 2 points. 2 points is definitely an underestimate. It's at least 4 points in terms of the difference here. And notice that when white attaches, black doesn't have time to capture the stone in the middle, ever. So this is the type of stuff that, like, if you're trying to become if you're trying to become a pro or you're trying to become a strong amateur player, this is the stuff that you really have to start to get and understand. Um, it looks very subtle, but these are the things that matter a lot between strong players, I think. Yep. So I think after that, white definitely won, and I think black made a little boo boo here with the with this knight's move here. Yeah, but again, this is Canadian Byoyomi, so remember, maybe we're just looking at the mistakes from one of the players having to play 20 moves in 1 minute or something, which um, happens a lot, I guess, in Canadian Byoyomi. I think Canadian Byoyomi is probably like the hardest type of um, the hardest type of rule set to get used to because it's just so like it's like time management on a whole new level. I always had a lot of um, a lot of issues trying to cope with Canadian Byoyomi. I either play too fast and then end up not using all my time, or making like mistakes with like and not playing fast enough and just having to play like 20 moves in 1 minute. That's definitely happened to me before. So I think I personally prefer Byoyomi because at least I don't have to manage the time. But I think what most people that I've talked to actually prefer Canadian Byoyomi because you get to manage your own time, right? You get to decide what what to do with your 10 minutes to play your 25 moves. But yeah, so afterwards it's not really um, that much to talk about, I guess. White was already ahead, so in the game, White even was able to get a double alive here inside Black's territory, so that even made it worse for Black. As a professional Canadian, I greatly enjoyed game. Okay, a professional Canadian. Can you define that term, please? Because I'd like to become a professional Canadian as well. So since we finished reviewing this game, feel free to suggest a game in the chat if you'd like. If not, I will just pick another game from that I guess that I've looked at that I found pretty interesting. So yeah, here's the list of games. And I hope the left side isn't cut off. I think the left side is slightly cut off here. Maybe we'll look at the maybe we'll look at this game because I was looking at this game and I saw a lot of fighting in that game. So I guess if I don't get a suggestion, we can just continue looking at this game. Oh, game from the open. Yeah, I think we should stick to a game in the open. Huanglong Shi game. Wow, wow, we're looking at ancient games. Nice to see a Brady game. Okay, so James has his hand up for this game. Yeah, I think I'd like to stick with the open games because there are indeed a lot of interesting games. And since the topic of today's the topic today is on the open, so I think we want to stick to that. All right, so how just had a bit of right, review this game. Here we go. You know, with AIs, I think a lot of people stopped appreciating like games from games with age, and I think that with this all this AI stuff, my biggest problem is that for people who study, it's just so easy to get distracted with all this AI, all these AI reviews. You see these AI variations. You know, but remember when you're studying Go, you have to actually understand the game. And if you look at older games like maybe Japanese games from the 1980s, um, like Huanglong Shi games, right? Those games are actually the best because first of all, they're very direct. Um, Arguably, the level back then was much lower than nowadays. So if you look at the top pro game now, it's going to be way harder to understand compared to back then, right? So I think it's important to keep in mind that when we're studying games, we're studying them to understand more about the game in general, and not about, okay, this one is 50%, this one gives me 4 points. Oh, I should have played there, right? But actually, it really doesn't matter at the end, right? I don't need someone to tell me where I should have played. I don't think that's helpful at all. If I ask Kujie, I can text him and ask him, oh, should I have played there? And maybe he'll text me back and be very annoyed, but really that information is not very useful. So I think it's important to keep that in mind. And also, yeah, the beauty of older games, you know. If you do actually spend the time to understand and improve your understanding of the shapes with all these new AI ideas, the stronger games, then of course that's a great way to study. But when you're distracted with just 1,000 shapes or 100 shapes that you see every day, um, I'm gonna question you about how much time you're gonna spend, right? So I think most people right now are too distracted with all of these sort of new OpenAI stuff. It's just um, in the end, if you do an AI review, you're not really gaining that much, and I can guarantee that you're gaining much less than you think. Maybe you're learning a little bit, but I think you're much better off just looking at a game yourself and going through it and coming up and creating those moves yourself. So that's just my opinion, though. Anyway, let's take a look at this. So already from the beginning, we see a lot of AI games. Sorry, not AI, a lot of AI moves. So first is the lower approach knight's move in this 3-space extension. I'm personally not a fan of this 3-space. I usually like just to play the 2-space a little bit more. But more importantly, we see this. This is a very complicated variation here. Oh, okay. So it seems like white played the incorrect move here. Actually, I've personally never seen this direct push and cut before. I don't know if that's, honestly, I don't know enough about this AI variation. I would actually have to spend some time to read it out. But the variation I've seen a lot was the 3-3 invasion and then push and cut. That's a much more direct variation. That's very forcing. So I'm not sure about the variation of the game. Maybe I can, maybe a strong player from the chat can tell me if I'm wrong, because to my knowledge, I haven't seen this direct push and cut before. Yeah. Hmm. But how should black respond? Guess that's a whole new story, isn't it? There's a lot of possibilities here. Well, the first one is black just descends, and it kind of goes back to the variation that I pointed out. So, yeah, maybe. So if I was in a game personally, I would probably just descend because I'm familiar with that, and I don't really see an obvious punishment here. Yeah, I don't think I can really increase the volume of my mic on my end. Is my volume really low? So let's see what happens in the game. So black target and blocked, and white is extended. Wait, hold on a sec. This actually doesn't make sense to me. Wait, why doesn't white extend? Okay, so here's something I don't understand. So if white extends, it threatens the cut here at R14. But also locally, black can't race the liberties against white. Black would have to push out, maybe attach, but in any case, escape. Is this not severe enough? Okay, so my volume is a little bit low. Okay, so let me see if I can adjust that. So it looks like my volume is pretty high on my end. Don't know if I can. Don't know if this helps. I'll try to talk a little closer. Yeah, but this actually just seems like a variation that's better for white. White has 5 liberties. That means black would definitely have to increase to 6 liberties at least. Oh, that helped. Okay, awesome. Yeah, white would have to increase to 6 liberties at least. Sorry, black would have to increase to 6 liberties at least to capture white in the corner. So I must be missing something because this seems like a good variation for white. Yeah, so um, this though, I think maybe that's also not that bad for white because there's a cut here. So I guess black played the wrong move here. So black should just descend. In the actual variation, what black needs to force white to do is make the exchange under here so that black can capture, so that black doesn't have the cut problem. Uh, and then it's pretty complicated here, but generally it's a sacrifice variation for white. So it's like something like this. Um, this is the variation that I've seen before, and to my understanding, it's an even result. Even though black has captured the corner, but it's only about 14 points, which is not unacceptable for white, but white is also very strong here, and if white can develop something, then it's an even result. So that's as much as I know about this variation here. Yeah, but in the game, if we compare these two, white's definitely better. Yeah. Yeah, so because black has to Atari under, this doesn't look that good for black. Okay. So it seems like we have a big center fight. Yeah. Um, I think it's actually useful to discuss this a little bit. Whenever you play the knight's move, we always want to prevent our opponent from getting this tiger's mouth. It's generally considered better for black if black can get the tiger's mouth. So what white should do here is Atari still. Even though black can push through, I think white should still Atari. So the first thing is that there's a cut here or clamp. Both of these moves are relatively difficult for black to respond. Um, the only reason that I see maybe white is worried about is maybe this push and cut. But this is actually pretty hard for black to use because for one, white can just sacrifice. So, if white just makes the Atari moves, white can just sacrifice the 4 stones. And I think that would be acceptable for white. I guess white doesn't need to Atari those center moves. Just Atari here is enough. So black just captures the 4 stones. It's not really a big deal. Um, but also, like white is gaining clearly a lot of corner territory. So I think I would prefer this for white more than just defending. Maybe white is very happy with the game right now. I'm not sure. Another thing is maybe white can consider just extending and then because this move is very urgent, right? It's a settlement move that's also relatively forcing. So as like a very solid player myself, I would actually prefer this for white. It's a very clear game. Um, but then again, it's going to be a relatively close game, I think. So I think generally I prefer the more obvious variations, I guess. All right, so black pincers, and now white has to answer to this group. Um, Oh, okay. Yeah, so I really not a fan of these two moves. So, first of all, the three stones are extremely light. So, I don't know what black is doing capturing these three stones. It's 10 points. That's it. And it doesn't even capture the three stones. White can diagonal and connect back. So, this is definitely a big mistake. So, I think the jump up is relatively big. Or maybe black can consider maybe jumping directly. Maybe what will Tiger's Mouth? So I think extend and jump is okay. White's not going to protect this right now, so I think this is like a bit of a false to Suji, really. If White ignores this move, Black is just gaining very minimally. Okay, so White Hane, this move is also not very clear what it's gaining for me because it's just helping Black protect. Um, Wait, so why is Black protecting here if White blocks in Sente? Okay, yeah. So these are all a little bit this whole sequence is all a little bit questionable to me. Um, yeah, especially like so. First of all, the Hane also. It's unclear what White is gaining. White doesn't need this move right now. So I think White should just attach and or just jump, really, or attach. Um, so this Hana just helps Black protect the weakness without really any gain, but also Black can just cut here later on. But also Black's move here. Um, if White blocks in Sente, and it is Sente because White can still connect back under, there's really no reason to make this move. So I have a lot of problems with this whole sequence. So at the end of the sequence, though, I think White gained more still because Black is just a little bit too territorial. I mean, this is a strong group. You don't need to connect it back. And making White strong again just to get the not even 10 points is really not worth it. Okay. Um, okay, it looks like I have even more problems with this game. So why isn't White extending out? There's a diagonal and cut, I guess. All right, so yeah, I tried to up my volume, but I think it's already at the max right now. So hopefully, if you turn up your volume, it will be okay. Unfortunately, I can't really do anything more on my end. I'll try to speak a little closer to my mic. Yeah, welcome. So my problem with this move. The first thing is that okay, so if White just diagonal, if Black just diagonal and cut now, it literally makes no difference. The fact that there's an extra diagonal here, White is still cut, and there's really no difference here. So the fact that the diagonal exchange, I don't see really the the whole any necessity with this series of exchanges. Um, yeah, so a bit questionable, and yeah, so I guess I'm a little bit picky with this game right now. Okay, so when black plays this move, black is obviously putting pressure on this white group. But really, you have to keep in mind, is white really weak here? I don't think white is really weak here. So if white just approaches, how is black going to answer this move? Okay, thanks for the comments on the sound. Um, yeah, I mean, so like I think this move is a little bit too ideal here. If white just approaches, I think this move, the maximum black can do here is this two space jump. Yeah. Oh, it looks like my mods have arrived. Thank you. Yeah, so I think like this there's a big problem with black's idealistic moves right now, because white's not really that weak. So white doesn't need to deal with, white doesn't have to respond to these pressuring moves. They're very subtle attack moves, but there's clearly a very important value in the lower right. And so I think the both players need to realize that. So this move is definitely a mistake. So is the next moves and all of the moves after this. So yeah, I mean it's not a really um, the wrong direction, but I think the problem with earlier was because players didn't realize how the fact that the three white stones are just not really that important. It's 10 points. Black's gonna move to capture it in the middle of the fight. Um, so that was Black's mistake. But then yeah, so here White just really need to approach, and I would I would definitely call the game for White right now. I think White's doing very well here. Yeah, but White gave Black the lower right territory, and I think the game maybe is much closer compared to if White invaded. So here's a bit of a detail here. Um, with the double Hane move, is White not afraid of Black just Tarian extending? I feel like this is something White should be worried about. Because the push at 06 is no longer in effect because Black can just pull back. It's not really beneficial for White in any way. And also White can't Hane because Black can just cut that, and both Ataris are Sente, so White also can't really fight that way. So I think this might be an option for Black at least. Oh right, so I see a question in the chat about the pincer. So if White invades and Black pincers, um, Black is relatively weak here. So I think even if White just plays maybe just the Tiger's Mouth, that's already a very hard move for Black to deal with. A very simple way for White to play is just a double Hane. If Black Atari is in the middle, White's definitely alive. And if Black Atari is here, for one, White can just live by making the attachment and pull back. So if White descends now, and then just pulls back. This is a very clear way of making this alive. But also, I think there's potentially more things going on if white Atari's the stone. Black is just so weak. The whole shell here surrounding white is very much broken shell. The outside is just too weak, so I don't think black is going to kill this white group. So that's why I feel like this p3 move is very hard to respond to. All right, so in the end, white gave black the territory in the lower right. So this seems pretty normal. I guess these are all pretty standard moves. So let's get to the fight here that I saw earlier. Yeah, so I think at this point we can safely say that black is very unhappy about the game. Especially like with this attachment, it's a very aggressive fighting move. So I think a general rule in these types of situations is that if you're white and you're ahead, you generally don't want to give your opponent the extra forcing moves. So here, your white is giving black these extra forcing moves and capturing the one stone. Literally, you're gaining 3 extra points compared to just blocking here, right? So I think it's very important if you're a strong player. These mistakes are quite severe, and you definitely don't want to be making this type of mistakes. These fighting mistakes. This is a very important strategy to get properly. So in this case, black connects, but then black doesn't have these 2 stones, right? And any marginal effect on a local situation could have a huge effect in the long run. So this is definitely a mistake by white. Yeah, but luckily white was able to handle the situation, so black wasn't able to do anything too much. So here I had a question. So what if black played this move directly? It wasn't obvious to me whether or not white can still capture black. I wonder if anyone in the audience can see what's going on here. So what's happening is that black is trying to start the fight because black is feeling behind. And what happened here is that as long as black saves a few of these groups and gets enough points from the fight, then black could connect the middle stone back and then gain a profit. So that's the goal for black. So let's see if white can prevent black from achieving that. So remember, white's ahead right now because white has a lot of territory, and white's leading in terms of territory. Anyone want to give it a shot? Oh, I see a question from earlier. Yeah, so you can sacrifice the corner, but remember the corner is most of your territory. So I think if you go for the side as black, you're going to be, first of all, you're going to be a lot less efficient than taking the corner. But also you're risking a lot because um, when you approach from the lower side, you're giving white moves on the left side. So remember in the game, black took the corner, but black also approached from the left side, giving black the whole left side to control. C14. Then let's see, maybe black will cut. Looking for some Tesujis here from the audience. Black looks very dangerous, but white would still need to play the correct move to guarantee the capture. Oh, okay. Um, right. Okay. White can play c12. And if black connects, didn't see the f11 weakness. Well, actually, yeah. So let's see what. So what now? Right. So you have to play the connection, but then, does white have enough liberties? Actually, I think in this case, black would actually continue in the center. H4. Oh, okay. You're talking about capturing these five. Oh, okay. So if we think about more groups now, it's going to get more complicated because we're going to have potential trades. Yeah, but it's safe to conclude that locally, white cannot directly capture black. That we can say for sure. Now, if you throw in directly, the problem is that you're going to have to connect on the outside first. It doesn't work because you can't play b10 now. And that's the issue because black can Atari and black can escape. Okay. And so it is a very dangerous situation for white to be in. So in the first variation, I guess the question was, what if white peeps now? And black connects. It's very complicated, but this is what white is really afraid of. This is what black really wants. Because the game is extremely complicated. So now what white needs to do is white needs to push on top maybe, and then connect back under. Then black escapes. Then white needs to worry about, first of all, the Hani at d11. And then white maybe can get some forcing moves. So then things get really, really complicated really quickly. But that's exactly what black wants, right? This is exactly what black was going for. Okay, I see another comment. White C12 first. Yeah, okay, I guess I think I already covered that then. Yeah. So it's very complicated, and we don't really know what's going to happen after. So why risk it? What if white just connects Atari and then say Tiger's Milk? Oh, one of the players is in the chat. The bottom left corner. Oh, I think the bottom left is alive, but it is very sad life. But regardless, it is alive. And actually, probably what you can do here now, if you're white, is you probably want to exchange these. First of all, it's Sente and it's free endgame. But also, you're giving yourself, for example, this is Sente, right? You have all of these extra moves you have. Um, Even if you connect back and black has to play here, when you descend, that's also a Sente move. Right? So this is definitely a move that white missed because if white got this, first of all, it's like a free at least 6 points, but also it would matter a little bit for the fight. I mean, if this was Sente, then this would totally work. Right? So you have a lot of stuff going on, but you have to keep in mind. Um, oh, okay, A6. It only kills if C8 is not Sente. But I guess it is a point, right? So it is a point that maybe even this move is Sente. Yeah, so it is a good point. Even though A6 is not Sente directly, but if you Atari and just connect, if that's Sente, then black is done, right? Because if the large knight's move just kills. So that's actually a very interesting observation there. And it is Sente because of that um, under the stone stuff. Right? So white can connect and then peep here. So whenever black blocks here, white can still cut, and then as long as black can't capture the stone fully, then black would be dead. But unfortunately, in this case, black can get the shoulder, Echusente. But then you can see here, this is extremely good for white because all of these are Sente, and now this whole thing is completely black and white can play whatever they want and capture something. Um, so this is definitely the clearest way for white to win this game. I feel like the hardest skill in this game is to find that most obvious way, that obvious path to victory. I think that's generally the hardest thing. So in this case, because black exchanged, I'm pretty sure white can connect here. And I don't really see a way for black to do anything because if black cuts now, all of the variations that we talked about doesn't work because um, there's the throw-in. But then maybe black could capture and jump. Okay, so I guess either way, we will have to rely on the lower left sequence. In the lower left, though, black does have a resisting move. Black can diagonal directly. So then white would have to rely on this ko to capture. So black would throw in and capture here to start the ko. But I think in this case, either way, white would have a very easy time because from earlier, the white's lead is very substantial. Especially black starting to fight this way, it's looking very dangerous for black. Okay. Yeah, okay, so this is definitely exactly what I would put in a Tsuji practice book. So where should black play now? Seven. Would you call that 7 lines of territory? What do you mean by 7 lines? B9? B11? B11? B11's taken. Oh, A11. Okay, yes. A11 is correct. Yes. Yep. So that's the move to prevent ko, right? This is the vital point here. And I'm a little bit surprised that black didn't find this. And I think the only explanation would be maybe black was pretty tight on Byo-Yomi, or black was just uh, or black was just about to give up on the game, because the difference here is that white gets a free ko threat. White gets a free ko. That means white gets to spend 2 moves in a row. So basically, black passed once in order to win the ko, compared to if black just wins the whole capturing race directly. So that made a huge, huge difference. And also, white obviously shouldn't have connected, right? White should have just Hane and blocked. Um, by the way, if you play the attachment, it's not a real Tsuji, because here white can force black to capture first, so it's the same thing. So black has to capture now, and then it's still a ko. All right. Yeah. So here both players made a pretty big misread here. Yeah. So after the corner was dead, um, I was pretty ready to call off the game, but I felt that in the game white made quite a few endgame mistakes. So in the game it was only four. So the result was 4.5 points. Yep. So right after the trade, I feel like white should have won by about 20 at least. But then there was a series of mistakes. So, but yeah. So white won by 4.5. So I think from the fight here, the players had a bit of a misconception with the the group as a whole, and then the fight on the left side was very messy. And I think these two fights really decided the game. All right. I think for me, I definitely will go back and take a look at this more, because I feel like it's a little bit embarrassing not to know what to do when white cuts, because honestly, nobody has played that against me before. So I've always went with the 3-3 invasion stuff. So that's kind of interesting. But personally, I'm not a big fan of this P15 though. It's too AI-ish for me. Um, I never felt that it was necessary ever. So I personally don't really play that move. I mean, if block just connects, like it's like What are you even? Is that even good? Well, it's debatable. It's debatable. All right, so I think I'm gonna get ready to wrap up now. I hope this was a fun lecture for everyone. I don't know about fun, but hopefully it was interesting. Yeah, so in the game, Black played S17. Oh, after the Atari. Okay, so block on that side. Okay. Also hard to say which side this would prefer. Maybe black, probably black. Probably will prefer black. You're welcome, my pleasure. And have fun, everyone, for the rest of the tournament. Thank you all for coming. Definitely a lot of interesting games have been played. So I'm looking forward to the other games. I guess I will catch you all later. Be sure to check out our channel. We have a lot of lecture and other game commentary videos, and check out our membership videos. If you want to support us, go to our social links below. Also, you can also join our Discord channel and check out our Patreon. Links are all on our channel. All right, so I guess that's it. I'm going to end the stream here. I'm going to go back to coding, probably. Thank you all for coming. It was great talking with you all. And I hope to catch you in a future stream. Thanks, everyone.